Hi, my name is Valerie Varan. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a holistic life coach, a lifelong spiritual experiencer, and an advocate for more quantum psychology. I love talking to different people who are into this. And today I couldn't be more glad to be talking to a master of Taoism, San Qing. Welcome, San Qing.
Thank you so much for having me, my dear friend. I'm very
Looking
grateful to
forward.
be here today. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Um,
Excellent. I'd like to begin for our viewers that may not know anything about Taoism to read a couple of my favorite excerpts of a couple of different verses, especially because I think it's going to set it up for us maybe even talking about this a little later. So to begin with, I'm looking at my Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, 6th century BC, verse 25, naming the nameless. What preceded the universe, the soundless and shapeless, origin of origins, ever transforming, having no beginning nor end? This mother of the universe is boundless and nameless. We will call it the Tao because Tao means great, incredibly great because it occupies infinite space, being fully present in the whole universe and in every infinitesimal particle. And then in verse 42, principles of transformation, just the first couple of parts, the great integrity expresses one. One manifests as two. Two is transformed into three, and three generates all the myriad entities of the universe. Every entity always returns to yin after engaging yang. The fusion of these two opposites births the vital energy that sustains the harmony of life. I love those. I think those are so beautiful.
yeah, it's a great. We basically use it as the go-to mastery of what we call the magical register, and so it really has this repeatable mirroring effect that brings the Taoist seeker back to the origins and returns back to who they really are. And every verse, which we refine as an incantation, is a reflection of a facet of perfection, which we call the diamond. And that is representative in every verse. If you look at every verse, just like the visceral feeling we're having, the charge, the chill, the expansion that we're both embodying right now, is that palpable exponential moment that you're having. We're experiencing it as experiences, as seekers. This is why incantations, this is why words, scripture, you gravitate to these things because of the power of them on a much deeper level, on a subatomic level that will be referenced in past lives. But for a Taoist, this is a representation, and it always returns you back to the same thing, which is the mother. And so
Absolutely.
people will read it and they'll be like, that verse meant it was absolutely perfect for me right here, right now, because it's a living scripture.
Oh, I love that. And speaking of that, let's start at the beginning of your journey. And I'm wondering if you mind sharing with the viewers, like, there you were, a wee lad. And, what was the first experience, or something like an experience or an awakening that led you on this path of the way to becoming a master of Taoism?
It's so interesting as you sort of reflect on the moments before you have this aha conscious revelation of what is this present moment. It's like, hang on a second, it all makes sense. It all just came together perfectly, and this led to this, led to this, led to this. Personally, I mean, I think it reflects on my near-death experience as a child. I grew up in a rural part of Australia, and I was hit by a car head on when I was a young boy. I should have
Goodness,
been
how
dead.
old were you?
I was probably about 8,
Wow.
and the actual experience was I recall very clearly I was driving away from a railway line because my house was just on the outskirts of a rural town in Australia. And I was on a bike, riding towards my home. And behind me was a railway track that people had to drive over to head out of town. And I heard this vehicle in the distance. And I turned around and I could see it from a distance. It was like a little, kind of like a speck. I was like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. I'm riding on the road. I'm almost at my home. And before you know it, my bike was jammed under the vehicle and I flew up into the sky. It wasn't a figment of my imagination. I saw the tops of the trees. And then I basically dropped to the side of the road. I stood up and my instinct was I need to see my mother before I die. And it was like the second I walked forward, I dropped to the ground and then my spirit left my body and I started floating in the air like Peter Pan. And I flew around the whole area. And it was as if I was in some sort of like, I would say, some type of like fantasy, like perfect awareness of everything around me. My abilities were not limited to my physical body. I was in the air. I was moving all over the place. I was witnessing my mother running to my body. I mean, there was the events that kept rolling out. And ultimately, in the end, I ended up being pulled back into my body. Not with there was no, a lot of people tend to refer to near death as being something where, well, I've been given a choice. They're telling me that I have to return or you can come with me. There was never a moment where I was having a dialogue with a larger force that would give me an indicator that I'm going to be present in this life or moving on to the next one. So it was very supernatural in the experience. And so it literally was floating around in the air, floating all around, witnessing myself in a sort of like third person experience, and then being drawn back into my body, waking up in a hospital where police were talking to my mother, and they couldn't believe that I was still like breathing.
Yes.
And so I ended up with like bruised kidneys. And it was an event that was so dramatic. From that moment, I would do things like look through my hand and see into another wall. And, you start to imagine. I was left with myself as a young boy to have a sort of a more creative view of reality because I was raised by a single parent. And there wasn't an element of perception-wise of myself being guided by a masculine figure. I was drawn to pop culture, celebrity, Hollywood, and that literally captured my attention as to, well, maybe this is the idea of what a man is supposed to be like. Yet I had this very sensitive feminine awareness, what we would call yin essence. And within Taoism, you acquire this at a much higher level of cultivation as you percolate the magnetic fluidity of those two polarizing elements, being yin and yang. And so it was something that I was embodying from a young age, as my mother was literally a radical feminist from the 70s. And she didn't wake up to the psyop until later in her life, but she was like, hey, look, I spent most of my childhood around women. And so I had very clear dialogue and conversation with all different types of women, all different types of ages, as from a young boy. And so I had this understanding and this complete, welcoming and embracing of this incredible energy that for me was just part of my everyday life. And so when I experienced it, it didn't seem like, oh, you should have more testosterone, you should be more masculine. It was just a part of the very fiber of my journey as an explorer. And then, of course, from that, it sort of blossomed into needing to, I felt I was extremely high gamma. So very, very sharp, top of the class. And a lot of the kids were not happy with that weird kid in the class that was.
Oh, they are not.
They weren't. And so I was subject to bullying, and that side effect, my guides that I little did I know, brought me to bodybuilding. So then I got involved with bodybuilding at the age of 10. And then I developed this masculine physical representation. And that kind of focused my attention for my teenage years. And then by the end of my teenage years, I realized that there was a voice telling me that, you cannot sustain this type of like level of intensity. And it didn't make sense to me because, I was doing, crazy lifting, heavy weights, powerlifting, bodybuilding, all these types of things that were sort of like counterintuitive to the intuition that I had naturally been born into. And it was just an effortless, as we would say, effortless action. And so there was this other energy that I immersed into. And there was a voice that was telling me, you need to find meditation. I'm like, what is that? At that point, it referred to, in those days, it was Hare Krishnas, yogis, Gandhi, the idea that, I'm a bodybuilder. I pick up things, I crush things. It doesn't make sense to me. At that point, I'd been involved in competing and all these types of things, but I always knew my intuition. I would listen to it. So I followed that path, and I got involved in a freebie because in those days that it was not as common as it is today.
No, it wasn't.
You're not gonna find a meditation class or a mindful class in the 80s. It was like, no, I don't think so. It's not the regular thing where most of society is still wondering, what was the Beatles talking about, the Yellow Submarine and all the other weird things that they're putting into their lyrics? I think it's some type of mind control. And, if you remember back in the 80s, they used to talk about, Kiss being kids in Satan's service. It was like this whole subliminal sort of like programming that they assumed that was hijacking young minds. And of course, there's a level of truth to that. If we go closer into the understanding of how things work, there is an absolute level of truth. But I found this meditation class, and I thought it was really, it was held by this person that said they're a grandmaster of Qigong, and she was this cute little lady. And I thought, oh, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Nothing. So I turned up to this rec center where they said they were having this freebie. I assumed in my mind it's probably someone just attempting to write off their nonprofit or something like, that's the skeptic, right? So I turn up there, I'm thinking, this intuition is telling me, put down the iron and go literally deep inside from the day one. And when we talk about it, my dear friend, that is really the answer to so many things for so many seekers. When they realize this, it's epiphany, it's mic drop type of material. That was kind of like my entry level. And I sort of sat in this meditation class. I looked around the room. There was half a dozen misfits like myself. I'm this overgrown gorilla trying to attempt the lotus position, and my back was hurting. This rec center was in the middle of some ghetto. I was literally thinking, I'm probably going to get killed when I walk out of here to my car. It's going to be over. And so she's standing there. There's noise outside, all this weird commotion. And I'm thinking, this isn't going to work for me. I've already admitted I'm going to fail, right? It's not going to work. And so she's going on about a few things, and I'm distracted by hearing people being shot in the background and screaming and all this weird stuff.
Like literally,
it's in a ghetto, literally ambulances, dogs screaming, the whole thing. And I'm like, I don't think this is going to work. I'm more concerned about whether I'm going to survive after this finishes and I got the car. And so she goes, now I want you to listen to my voice. And I'm like, my back's aching. I can't do this lotus thing. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Mindfulness, lotus position. And she's like, all I want you to do is listen to my voice, and then everything will fall away. And then it went silent. And she was like, and I literally was like completely blown away. There was not sound. I couldn't hear her voice. I couldn't hear anything. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I have never experienced this access to this level of, at the moment, it would have been considered power, ability, skill. It was like, I've picked up things and I've moved hundreds of pounds, like with my bare hands. But this is like, screw these weights. This is the most powerful access to all things. And I had no idea what that was, but I knew that that was this very moment. And I'm like, I've never been able to consciously switch something off like that. And just everything just disappears. It's like, this is, and of course, now we look at it and we go, okay, well, that was the Wu Ji. That's the void. You are right there, my dear friend. It is happening. Now, I was just so blown away by that. I started looking into, well, what is this Qigong thing? What is this woman teaching? It's like, it's not just meditation. And then, of course, I went deeper, and I got into a path where I eventually ended up studying Taoism, and I became ordained into lineages of Taoism. I mean, we could go on for days, so I'm going to abbreviate it. And basically, it merged me into where I am today, and I've been teaching people this sort of like mastery for decades now. And, you know, the events that lead up to that, like literally that same week, I went from bodybuilding to, I discovered this thing called meditation, to the following week taking a channeling class and channeling Lao Tzu for the first time. Didn't know what that was, but like everyone's like, you just hit the mother lode instantaneously. And I have now this dialogue with this entity that most people would tell me is a psychotic episode, yet I'm having this energy pouring out of my body, and I've got this cultivation channeling teacher telling me, who's been doing it consciously for 60 years, this is the most profound thing he's ever seen. I've been waiting my whole lifetime to see this. And he was literally actually angry, because I've spent 60 years doing this, and you walked in as this overgrown ape, and it went like this. And for me, I attribute it, we come back to remember who we are. Now, I attribute it to also having this childlike nature. I just accept things at face value. I have no reason not to. And that's sort of like staying in that intuitive yin energy that I was born into. Of course, there are no coincidences. Of course, everything was laid out perfectly for me to have that moment where it all just blossomed into this great awakening, like the charge we're having right now. It's like, holy moly. And so, you know, I always tell people, no matter where you're at in your own journey, there are no coincidences. And that first moment of realization is the conversation that we have. And then where that leads you could be to an instant remembrance of who you are. And once that happens, all bets are off. There are no limitations. There is no book or absolute truth to anything that you experience at this point once that happens.
Well, and people who have had near-death experiences, you know, when we study such experiencers, we do find that these skills, if we want to call them these skills, these remembered states of being, it is as if it has come closer to the surface, and it doesn't take much to really turn it into something. And it says a lot about your first meditation teacher, that grandmaster of Qigong, that so quickly she clearly was able to command the space, and you clearly resonated with her at such a level that boom, magic happened. And then, so it sounds like through that you found Taoism. And how did you find your particular lineages?
That's probably a story for a whole nother day. But in essence, it was the same sort of pathway. I was looking for teachers, and when you look, of course you'll find, but finding the ones that actually have merit and value, and how the path that it took me, and going to China and being ordained and things of that nature, that's like I could create a whole TV show on that in of itself. But understanding when you hit these resonating moments and you develop an awareness that this is what you do, because I don't split any hairs. It's not like, oh, well, I have a deep understanding of many different methods and belief systems, and there is a million ways up the mountain. But most people find it really strange that you have never deviated from the Taoist path, because I've been a Taoist for thousands of years. And it's not about like, oh, my team's better than yours, or it's got nothing to do with that. It's just remembering and resonating with this knowing, and then I'm able to impart that and help people remember themselves, who they are. And so many people get distracted in their journey to the conscious awakening of who they are, that they get caught up in what I've coined as information seekers, or consumers, or acquirers of information. And most people will go, I'm just curious. I'm curious to develop. I want to know more about, I just want to know more. I just want to know more. And what happens is the old expression, you're a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so,
well, and sometimes, right, it's they become addicted to the information. Clearly they're feeling at arm's length to it. They first want to feel it and touch it a little bit to see if it feels safe enough to really zoom in. And like you said, people can go lifetimes without really just jumping in and being a path. And so it sounds like your journey took you to China, and
yes.
And you didn't get lost in the seeking. You
Oh, no. I mean, I was just going to say, you become really embodied, like the language, the culture, the people. They're my people. It's as if I returned home, and now we could have many different versions of what the political landscape is, but let me just say it briefly. That is not a representation of the Chinese people. Absolutely not. No. So the heated political environment has nothing to do with the beauty of the Chinese landscape and the Chinese culture and the Chinese people. Yet they attempt, most of the world attempts to couple those together, which is very disappointing for me, because you fall into this judgment, and you most people speak so quickly on something that they're not very clear on. And I mean, the Chinese people have suffered a lot. Taoists have suffered a lot over thousands of years. And, there's been megalomaniac dictators that have perpetrated genocide at a level of, 60 plus million citizens being completely wiped off the face of planet Earth because they wanted to control the environment that they were in. I mean, it's unheard of. Most people can't believe that when I share that with them, and they're like, "What?"
yeah,
And I
and
mean,
like you
what's going
said,
on?
we really can't just keep any more than we can in this country. We can't just put everybody all in one category, certainly. So, but I love that, right? So you had this near-death experience. Eventually you started hearing intuition and guides more and more. It sounds like it led you to the grandmaster of Qigong, ultimately you were open to finding teachers, and the universe kind of provided and sent you to China. And ultimately, it sounds like you experienced a couple different lineages. And it sounds like you've been channeling Lazu, which is, like you said, made some people really angry that you could do things so quickly. So I have a question is along this journey, you said a couple of things that made me want to ask you this. Over the course, have you remembered lots of past lives that are related to your Taoist path?
Oh, absolutely.
I would love if you want to share a few.
Well, sure. I mean, let me see. I can remember at least 27 different times that I was a Taoist priest. I was also a Buddhist monk over 6 times. I was a Catholic priest 6 or 7 times. I always resonating back with this some form of belief system that might be structured in what perceived as religion, but I mean, for the last 100 plus, they've always been constructed in some way, form of someone's belief in something that really brings us back to the mother, brings us back to God, brings us back to universe, brings us back to Buddha, this super glue that most people identify as something that's not the same substance that we operate in this, what we consider 3D reality. It's perfection. It has a whole different profile.
You're actually bringing me right to a question I had wanted to ask you, right? Because here you are in this lifetime with these learnings, but you're also remembering your past lifetimes and various learnings. And we carry those memories. I mean, we even kind of know that in regular psychology, believe it or not, we've been able to see how, let's say, if someone ended up being part of the Holocaust and wasn't able to find healing, it seems like they are literally passing along their trauma. And I think we've measured 7 generations that we can pass our traumas along. So we have all this carried energy, carried memories, if you will. But there's so much more than meets the eye to what is forming our belief system. And so now that you brought that up, how would you, right? So there's Lao Tzu's words, everybody has their words, but how would you, and I know I'm asking a tough question, but how would you synthesize what you believe about the nature of reality and any concepts of these non-physical realms compared to our physical cosmos, let's say, like, you know, this worldview? How would you, what frame do you carry now?
Well, you know, I mean, once you identify that there is something beyond what you perceive as your reality, which is what you consider this materialism, this very slowed down sort of processes of, you know, a transmutation of light to some type of form of matter that you're perceiving from your attention intention, things change. And now you have these glimpses. Most people will come across, you know, I heard a voice, or grandma came to me, or, you know, I just knew this thing. And they have these epiphanies, and that's the beginning of their adventure into a whole different state of awareness. And it really does come down to that. It's like a state of knowing and not being distracted by the emotional content and perceiving yourself as this flesh and blood. And most people are like, that sounds delusional. Actually, no, you have been trained to believe that you are limited, when in truth, even right down to something as simple as a quantum model, this is a simulation. That there is a depth of understanding that this is not what it seems, that there are more things, more facets, more angles to what you're experiencing, rather than I have a 9-to-5 job, I get married, I buy a house, and then I die. And most people are just blown away by that. I think there's more evidence of people having aha moments now than in the last 30 years I've been teaching people this stuff. And
Well, what I
probably,
love is the Pew Research Center, more recently, the percentages keep increasing, whether that means people are more willing to admit it, or is there something shifting from a consciousness standpoint in our society. But the Pew Research says between 30 and 55% of people are saying, yes, I've had one or more of these various kinds of spiritual experiences, if you will. So like you said, when the field of psychology even keeps behind, they're way behind. They're more in the quantum or the classical physics before it had its quantum revolution, and psychology hasn't budged. And it keeps saying that all we are is a product of this physicality. Consciousness is a product of the neurons, somehow an epiphenomenon. And like you said, unfortunately, people who share these experiences have been harmed because they have been told that's a delusion or that's a hallucination and what have you. But like you said, the research is growing, the numbers are growing. We're acknowledging this. And now experiencers, I'll just lump us all into one word, experiencers of something beyond this limited physical reality. No wonder we're searching for words that will never come close to describing anything, but that's the best we have. We clearly, there's a reason we might want to communicate about it. And so we are searching for words. And I'm hearing for you, the word simulation kind of resonates.
Maybe I just came off another 3-hour podcast with a dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell. So I might be using a little bit of his wordsmithing. It's appropriate. It's what's most important is that absolute truth is your truth. And that when people start to get caught up in the absolute truth is this, and whatever you're experiencing is not correct, it's incorrect, this is the construct of how you are supposed to experience this, can be problematic in of itself, because you are the knower of who you are. Once you remember, the knowing is this very moment, and it will return you to realizing, oh my goodness, oh, I resonate with Jesus Christ because I was Jesus Christ in a past life, or perhaps maybe I'm a facet of God or universe or Buddha. It will show evidence of itself within your physical body. That's the easiest tuning fork to get a resonation. And most people are like, well, I don't feel anything. Well, I can tell you, if I tell you to go F yourself, you're going to feel something. And so people go, what? I'm like, it's almost problematic in of itself. That's a first indicator of how much you're removed from truly embracing the idea of something greater. And people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, when someone has a need to control your very thoughts and your very feelings by saying, you said F you, or you said this, or you said that, and it affects me, then they're immediately attempting to control how you process your own reality. And people are like, what? What are you talking about? Just that movement of engaging with you and telling you, this is what I don't like about whatever you're doing, and you need to stop it, is an indicator of how empty and how absent they are of knowing who they really are. And they need to return. They need to return. They need to have a greater understanding. And that's a moment where, who is it? Joe Dispenza's one-liner that I always reference. No one likes to strike a match in a dark place. This is that feeling that you don't think you have. I don't have a feeling. I don't feel anything. I don't feel energy. I don't feel anything. Really? Well, you're just not aware of it. Just like anything else, just like that conscious moment where you have the near death, the OBE, you have the epiphany, grandma comes to you, walk into a church, you see ghosts, whatever it is, you have that moment. And that charge that we're having right now is an expansive moment of knowing. And this is what I think we continue to reinforce, I definitely do in my own teachings, in helping people to realize that they have these very tools within them as this physical body, this tuning fork, to help them decipher and navigate through their own experience to know what is true and what is not for themselves. Because this comes back to the simulation idea, where this is their virtual journey, not your truth is not my truth. It's not Valerie's. It's not anyone's truth. It's your truth.
Well, and
so
let me jump in on that one, because I love how Anirban Bhattacharya, as a quantum physicist, will literally say how fundamentally accurate it is when we realize that all truth will be superseded by other truth. I mean, it's like experience itself is so fundamentally unique. He will keep saying how you have no idea how orthogonally different every dimension is. And he goes on and stressing that. But we're finding that even, for instance, Elane Wabe at Institute of Noetic Sciences, she's doing the noetic signature inventory, and she's literally trying to capture just how unique all of our experiences are. And so no wonder we can't agree on one truth, because again, everything is so orthogonally different. Reality is this unique stream. And so no wonder that Tom's word of simulation may appeal to him. It may appeal to, people of certain fields. That just is the word that works for them. But no wonder then I pose that question to you, because to me, it is so fascinating. I love when I hear people so orthogonally different describe that difference, to describe the way they interact with reality. How do they perceive reality, this reality beyond the physical? How do they experience it, and through what modality, right? Some people who might be clairvoyant see things. They might see energy beings and energy spheres and, different things, and they might describe their experience, but everybody is truly that unique. So what words, forget Tom's interview for a moment, like what words really capture your experience of this reality that is beyond the physical?
It's really the now. So it sums up to that. That's my Death Star. And of course, that's my fond gravitation to pop culture, and being sort of nurtured by that throughout my childhood, that it becomes so clear to you that we all have that ability to access that very moment. And then it's not evidence-based until it is. So you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And that's all got to do with the experiencer. It all has to do with that aha epiphany moment. And so you and I can have such incredible dialogue, and a lot of people will listen and go, what in Tao's name are they talking about? Mm-hmm. And so I would reference a really profound moment, I think. So not a fan of this particular celebrity, but she introduced something within the stratosphere of possibilities for people to be awakened to it. And even decades later, a lot of people don't understand this, but Oprah Winfrey had Deepak Chopra on for the first time. I think it was first or second time. And she's sitting there and she's like, wow, welcome back to the Oprah Winfrey Show. And we have this incredible guest, special guest here today, Deepak Chopra. Welcome, Deepak. How are you? And he's sitting in a lotus position in his chair or something. And he goes, well, I'm not here, but my body is. And she goes, I'll be right back after this commercial break. I'll see you soon.
True story.
It's
wow.
just, and it's just in the 80s, like 82, 81, whenever she had her show, whenever the beginning of her show was, I'm not going to, don't quote me on, Jifu, it was 83, whatever it is. When
early 80s,
that was that moment where people were like, what is going on now? This sounds like gobbledygook. And quite frankly, I do get that a lot. I get a lot of people that are like, I don't know what you just said. Like my brain has just exploded. And what you're experiencing, what you're speaking of it's like I'm listening to another language from another planet. And this
Well, it
is what's
is, right? Because our understanding can only come from wherever we are. I mean, you know, sometimes our growth, it doesn't have to, as you and I know, it can be a quantum leap, but sometimes on this plane of electromagnetism, things are slow. We're in a slowed time, a slowed gravitational field, if you will. And so no wonder we experience things very differently. But when you say beyond this reality is the now, again, we all interpret through our own lens, but what I interpret through that, the beauty of the simplicity of that answer is it points to how time itself is an illusion. And even beyond, even if we look at near-death research, spiritual experiences research, after-death communications, there's a lot of bodies of research that are unfolding, like you said, very foreign to what we experienced in the 80s. But even quantum physics is showing us that time is more like there's this space, time, matter, and energy, but the whole quantum realm is beyond that. That's why we're having to study precognitions, retrocausations. How is that possible if we only have this space-time reality? So when you say everything is one now, it's a beautiful description of how it's beyond time, it's all now, it's all experience, it's all things and all no things, all being experienced in one now. So in a way, I understand the simplicity of that. I mean, does that even come close to why you use the word?
Yeah, I mean, what happens is we refer to the bellows, right? So the simplicity of that is you are all things and nothing at the same time. So you're contracting and expanding at the same time. People go, huh? Well, the simplicity of that even further would be when you're at your lowest, you're at your highest. Whoa, what does that mean, Jifu? Well, is your glass half empty or half full? And people are like, I've heard that expression before. Well, this is the evidence of all things. And when you can actually check yourself and embody that now moment and go, well, I'm perceiving, most people go on a roller coaster, oppression, depression, possession. They go on this roller coaster that they assume they're just asking for more, like that Oliver Twist moment. You want more, boy? Can I have some more, sir? You're getting more. You are mirroring whatever it is that is what you are creating, as was the simplicity of an incantation. I may have shared it with you on my podcast, but I mean, it comes right from the Jain Emperor. It's quite simple. A power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. And through that visceral experience that we all embodied right now is the evidence that you need as an experiencer to go, holy moly, I'm still not intellectually processing that, but I am intuitively know that I'm in the right space. I know that what I just experienced was true to me. And
if I even think of the most simple example for someone who is like, what are you talking about? What are you smoking, dude? Right? That's kind of where they're coming from. But no wonder we bring people's attention to the breath, because if you're aware of the breath, you are aware of the bellows. You are aware of, as you inhale, we expand. As we exhale, we contract. So like you said, that movement is everywhere. And it does seem rather Alice in Wonderland like, what is above is a blow, what is high is low, and everything seems upside down. But what's interesting is it all comes back to what we think is a thing. if we're talking about we are all things, well, how are we defining things? If we are defining things in terms of form, well, then no wonder then we say we are in all things, because at the quantum level and beyond, we can see how there is no boundary that is not an illusion of boundary, that is not a boundary created in consciousness, right? So we can say we are all things because all of a sudden we see how we truly merge with all things, which we're defining as form. And at the same time, when we say we are simultaneously no thing at all, we are realizing that we are between the two breaths. We are realizing that we are the space between the form. We are that which comes before any form, all at the same time. So when, with all these beautiful conversations, and boy, we could do a whole nother time where we really go down some rabbit holes, I bet. But when you think of, and for lack of a better word, I am going to call it skill, right? Because just like when you first appeared at that grandmaster's meditation class and your eyes are rolling and you're like, yeah, who is this, person? It is interesting in other, I'll say other realms, how easy people throw around the word master. And so unfortunately, it does lend itself to skepticism by people who they don't know anything about what we're talking about. They're more typical everyday people. And this is foreign, and they hear people describing themselves as masters. And yet, unfortunately, it's amazing how many people fall from the pedestals that they get put upon, right? And so without elaborating that, how would you describe for our viewers when someone attains master level in the Taoist lineage? What does that reflect? What are they now able to, quote, quote, do or be that they could not before they attained that mastery, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, the semantics of titles are, to me, I use it as an entry level to share with someone my position in my depth of understanding of what I do. It's a title that's given to you as an ordained priest, and then that develops from even further as you start to acquire skills. That sort of takes you to a level of grandmaster if you choose to accept it. I mean, I probably could have 5 times the grandmaster title to my name to this day if I actually wanted to drag it along and attach it to my name on top of a PhD here and a BA there and a whatever else it is. You get to a certain point where someone's CV is like, you're like, you lost me at the first 20 things that you put on your list of supposed mastery or expertise. And
yeah,
so
it's like over focusing on all the credentials.
Well, I've come across people that are, masters of this and masters of that, and they couldn't heal their way out of a paper bag. Yet they have all the book learned stuff, yet they return to me for the actual experience that it takes to develop those skills, because it goes way beyond just reading off a meditation that was maybe created 5,000 years ago, which is a lot of the ancient stuff that I teach people.
Yeah, let me ask it this way. Maybe this will help. So if someone is watching, right, you have many of these beautiful teachings out there and they're watching and they're like, wow, I would like to follow San Qing on this path. And I would love to work until I have been ordained as master. How would you describe what they would go through? Is it a certain amount of time? What would be the...
Yeah, I mean, I've started many priest class over the years, and they normally take about 9 years. And most people make it through the first 3, and then that's it. they crash and burn. And it's listen, I always remind people, you could obtain my access to information from a neurological perspective. You can obtain it just from the mirror neurons that you possess yourself. Now, this in of itself, this idea of that is crazy, but we're getting down to the science now. We're just getting down to the brass tacks, as my grandmother would say, understanding that that is the simplicity, and a lot of the ideas that come out of say perhaps someone like a Bruce Lipton or a Joe Dispenza is relying on the very neural network and infrastructure that reinforces and validates what they're teaching is real. So you can go past that. Now, through his own admission, he talks about, spirits coming into his healing sessions and things of that nature, but he's very reserved about talking about that type of stuff.
Who is that we're talking about?
Joe Dispenza.
Oh, Joe Dispenza. Okay, so he talks about. Okay.
He has that conversation. Now, for a mastery, there are 9 elements to what I acquired as the highest ascension for a Taoist alchemist, a Taoist seeker, is direct source information, is direct channeling, right? To channel direct source information. Like, I can sit here without any sustenance. If I don't need to eat or drink food or water, I can literally be nonstop transcribing information directly, nonstop forever. I could write 100 books. I could write a book in 5 minutes if I wanted to, on deep-seated understanding and information coming directly from the source of the teacher. Now, channeling is the highest source within a Taoist seeker's development. And so it starts with developing the physical body, the energetic body, the spiritual body. Then it goes to the sun body, the earth body, the moon body. Then it goes from the moon body to the oneness body, the ultimate body, and then being one with all things. And that is the progression of the development skills that you acquire as a Taoist seeker. And that also is parallel to the 9-year processes that I generally take people through if they want to train with that. Now, they can wake up one day and have access to all the senses. And if they can show me the skill set that they've developed is of that level, then I'm completely fine with it. But generally speaking, a lot of people will start with this very limited view. They have a sense, an inkling that there's something greater. And method is so very powerful for anyone that is looking to acquire this level of mastery. And so we have so many different methods as Taoist alchemists. And part of the Taoist alchemy is in reflection. And what I was talking about earlier and what you mentioned was, we always speak about yin and yang, which is the breath in and the breath out. That center point is the Wu Ji. That is the mother of all things. And with that, you reveal Wu Wei, which is effortless action, effortless effort. You are what people would more commonly call the flow. I'm in the flow, baby. And that is that center point. That is that moment, that present now moment. So the developmental skills generally take a path that is similar to that from a priest perspective. Now, that is not to say that an alchemist can't take one of my 3-day training programs and be fast forward into a very deep understanding of energetic potential and the infrastructure, and turning on what we call the infinite Wuji body, which basically is a on steroids version of a Kundalini awakening, which you can obtain through this training. And with that, you go into sacred geometry, numerology. All these things are integrated into a color system where we use 81 different colors, 81 different elements that go within the training system. These are all very, I find that within the Western world, you have very few, if any, Taoist teachers that are able to teach people internal alchemy. It's more just this, I'm talking about actually cultivating dantians where you have experiential moments that are valid, self-evident by you and your recipient, your patient, your person that needs a healing. These are all just, it's most of it's just talk. And so when I talk to people about the alchemy and they go into the periodic table and they're talking about, what's the merging of certain elements that create this, from a materialism world, there's one thing. And then when you get into something that is tangible and intangible, and the actual infrastructure of what that alchemy is a complete opposite of what people reveal to know what alchemy is. They go, what are you talking about? Like their mind gets blown, because within Taoism, it's 3 steps to the side, 4 steps forward, 8 steps back. And here I am. Welcome to the world. Don't worry, I'm not going to confuse you. And that is a part of realizing that you are straying from that path, what we call the way, right? Which is, in definition, the Tao. You do not stray from the path. The reflection will mimic that. That's why when I mentioned that incantation before, your gift is your offering. Your gift is your offering. And so what does that mean? It means that from a simple karmic model, what you put out, you receive. As below, as above, we understand this conceptually for most, but in reflection, you are the reflection of perfection or not. Where are you at? And when we talk about the bellows, we're talking about this is the mother. Now, man is not like that. So if you perceive yourself as this reflection of this physical flesh that you see before you, looking back at you in the mirror, you are going to be very limited until otherwise noted. That's why the alchemy is so important, because once you start accessing the energetic potential, you can start seeing things that are quite clear to you when you're being able to create this robust energetic aura, and you will see it through your cultivational practices, and it will be shown to you by simple things like, most of the people that come to me are, I'm energy healers, I'm energy workers, I'm an architect, I'm a judge, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant, I'm a guru, and they all have this fundamental same issue. And what is it? By the time I finish my day, I'm exhausted, because your attention intention is spending your very essence, what we call Jing, from your physical body, until you're able to embody and realize that you can tap into the mother at will and be the mother. You are going to sell your soul, the expression sell your soul, sell your very essence in every event that you have throughout any course of any moment in your natural born life, because everything is energy. So you are subject to the limitation of that if you perceive yourself as the physical flesh, which moreover brings me to what the Jade Emperor always reminds us. When you believe, when you know you are not of this body, what can harm you? Nothing. And the fastest way to do that is through the energetic potential. You must be able to cultivate that and show, it must be shown to you through your own experience that you validate it. And one of the first things you can do when you do that is bring your constitution up to 100%, take it from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000. People understand what I'm talking about. You saturate the cells. You become the maestro of those 50 trillion cells. And then you can start isolating and concentrating that energetic potential however you choose to. When you can see that evidence-based stuff from your training, you'll realize that you can go through a course of the day. And I've had this conversation with Tom. We've had, 3-hour podcasts, he's been on podiums. He's a sprite young lad of 80 years old. He'll stand on a podium for 8 hours straight, and people look at him and go, are you okay? I feel amazing, because this is the very evidence that you need to identify with as you start to develop these skills, that you are not tapping into your physical life force. You are accessing the mother. And when you do that, it will be representative in your experience, and you'll know that at the course of the end of a day, you'll be more energized than you were when you first woke up, because you're embodying that present moment. And these are some of the fundamental things that you are aware of as you continue to cultivate. And this is one of the biggest hurdles that I've seen over decades of teaching people energetics is, oh, I discovered Reiki, I do Qigong, I'm an energy healer, but I'm exhausted, I'm a channeler, I'm exhausted, because you're sacrificing your very essence instead of realizing that you're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And when that's the truth, and it's not just, rhetoric and just talking head stuff, you will be able to see it through your own cultivation. Does that make sense?
Yes, what I love about that is, if I'm summarizing correctly, you're really elaborating on how, while there are intellectual learnings and teachings and what have you, that prepare someone, the fruit is the experiential, the energetic experientials that go along, and everybody having to prove to their own self how they are radically changed, how they are radically different, and they can see the evidence with their own eyes of what's going on. And I love also what you said of how any of us who have ever learned any of these things that you mentioned, energy healing or Reiki or channeling or what have you, it's like the fundamental mistake, if you will, that we all go through is using our own energy field. And in my mind, I've become very aware of all we're doing there is moving around our own electromagnetic field. And when I hear what you're trying to convey, and again, we don't have accurate scientific words because all the theorists are going to argue amongst themselves, but I would say most of them will say, we're actually even going beyond energy, although it meets energy, because it's energy. Like, even if we look at general relativity, it's energy that shapes the fabric of space-time. But energy, in the way we define it scientifically, is relegated to space-time, almost by definition. And so what other words do we use? We don't have them yet. We could say we're tapping into power. But like you said, it's beyond space-time. It's not electromagnetic. It's beyond. And like you're saying, is when we tap into that, which is nameless right now scientifically, we have a lot of words, but we still don't really know. But when we're tapping into that, I can feel you as you're saying it, right? The power is different. There's no longer an observer of something because there's no longer the dichotomy. You just automatically are that which you, where you went, you are that. And like you said, when you are that, and when you're, so if you're the space in between, and if you're drawing from what scientists would say the quantum realm, or even more primitive, the informational meaning realm, even things below the quantum, like you're just drawing that directly, and the powers that it gives us, like you said, are mind blowing.